Hello and welcome to our newest episode of the question series. If you've tuned in for the first time, I encourage you to go back and take a look at our catalog. We've had quite a few episodes on different topics now. Most recently, a couple weeks ago, we talked with Jared here in town about his experiences with some of the more marginalized community here in town and his experiences and how that helped him walk through his faith and how his faith made a difference to that kind of ministry and that kind of work. Today, we're here with Don Thompson. And Don Thompson, since 1987, has carried through a practice here in town in specializing in clinical social work and working with families and couples and individuals and a variety of people. Don holds a master's in clinical social work, and this is kind of his area of expertise. If you followed on our Facebook page, you've noticed that today we're going to talk about mental health struggles and specifically to do with our faith, to kind of keep us on theme with our whole question series. And what that means, I guess, from his perspective, from Don's perspective, and what it looks like on his side of the chair, and what he's learned about what it looks like on our side of the conversation as well. And some of the things that he's helped people through, people of faith through, and how they understand mental health struggles in terms of their walk with Jesus and without. So with that, maybe we'll just ask Don, kind of if you can explain to us a little bit about what you do with your practice, and we'll talk.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as you already said, I'm in private practice here in the Grand Prairie and Northwest Alberta area, and I do treatment work, therapy with individuals, couples, and families. Mm-hmm. Additionally, I provide some what's called organizational consultation, so that's working with teams and agencies on communication and that kind of thing.
Oh, very good. Very good. So you've been working for quite some time now, since 1987.
1987, part-time private practice, and then as a social worker before that, from 1970.
Yeah, goodness gracious. That is quite some time. Like I've just started my career, actually, so to contemplate that much time to learn, actually, even what you're doing, is I'm quite looking forward to it. As far as this particular topic and struggling through mental health issues and such, what are some of the things that you came into this type of work as somebody who's a churchgoer and somebody who believes in God? Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you thought through that may have changed once you started working through this?
We did talk on the phone yesterday, and I thought about the idea of what you asked. How has your career and life informed your faith? Yeah. And then I also thought, how has my career and life been informed by my changing faith? And I didn't know which way to put those first. So I guess over time, as I've worked with families especially, I have learned in my faith and in my experience as a dad to learn a lot from the clients I've had. Yeah. And I often say in some of the classes I teach and that kind of thing that my kids at home were lucky I had the clients I had, because I learned a lot from the clients, both in terms of how to try to get things done as a father, and in my faith too, as to how to change that. I think over the years I've become a little more mature. Yeah. I'm still not totally mature, but that, and then I think quite a bit less reactive, both from a faith perspective and from how life works for people. Yeah. So you, talking to your clients throughout the years, you said that kind of maybe softened your approach to conversations with people, both inside of faith and out? Yeah. I'd say so. It allows for some, I guess, what I try to do when I work with people is ask questions that help them think for themselves. So that's the main focus in all my sessions. I have found sometimes it's good to ask questions that maybe people haven't thought about for themselves, to raise some new kind of thinking for them. Yeah.
Why don't we dive a little bit deeper into that? Because most of the people watching right now and in the near future are probably churchgoers and people who are familiar with how ways of thinking, attitudes like stuff, in terms like joy and stuff are thrown around quite a bit, and self-control and suffering are thrown around quite a bit in the church. But then, as a person grows up and experiences different things in life, and they feel like they need professional help through that, but they don't know how to go about it outside of, like, say, like, a reading scripture, talking to a pastor perspective. Maybe walk us through some of those conversations that you have, and maybe from a professional standpoint, what that looks like to talk to somebody beyond, or maybe not beyond, but parallel to those kinds of conversations that they grew up having, with their struggles with, like, maybe I need some more help here rather than just need to do better.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things you just talked about is really important, and that is that it's good if the topic is about mental health.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we're affected by illness
Yeah.
within our mental state as well. And I'll get to the point about when I talk to someone where I would go, it's really important though that as people think about and struggle with these ideas about how they should be with their emotional health, that they also try to talk to someone, and it doesn't have to be a professional at first.
Yeah.
Talking to someone you trust is an important thing to do. However, once you've moved through that kind of conversation and other things that you might have tried, then looking for support and help from a professional person around some of the questions is a really good idea. The kinds of things we would talk about in a therapeutic session would be for me to listen to what the client is describing as the kinds of things they've come to talk about, what they want to talk about, and what their hopes are. And from there, moving into the client's thoughts about their faith, how they apply their faith to their perspective of how they're living, and the kinds of things that are stressful for them. And then moving to questions about what are the goals you have? What would you like to see? It's one of my favorite kind of questions. It's called a sort of a solution focus approach. And it's a scaling question. So if one now is, let's say the problem is I'm trying to figure out how to get along with my kids. So if 1 is you think you're getting along really badly, and 10 is I'm doing a perfect job, what number are you today?
Right.
And we'll talk about how come the person says they're that number. And then, so if you wanted to get 2 steps higher, what do you think you would like to do? What would be the goals for that? And certainly from a faith perspective then, it's asking questions that help the Christian client to think about what they, where they are on that scale, and how their belief in God and God's leading is leading them, and where they would like to go.
Going further into that, maybe the Christian client idea. Maybe it doesn't happen as much now as it might have used to, but have you found that some people walk in hesitantly into that kind of conversation, like they're unwilling to admit that they do need some sort of strategic help through that? Or do you normally, by the time they're in your office, that they definitely are like, I need help, I'm desperate for something, I don't have any other strategy to go through this?
I think the latter. By the time they've come to my place, they've decided there's something they would like help with. Sometimes, though, there's still a struggle to identify or to bring up what's deeper, and to talk about what those things are. So it's interesting in the Christian church perspective. Some of the thoughts for a person trying to enter into a counseling process is about used to be about my faith isn't strong enough. therefore I'm having this trouble.
Right.
Or I must have done something really wrong and God is punishing me for this.
Right.
And I think that those kinds of thoughts are actually becoming less frequent than what they used to be.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I understand that. Actually, I've had many personal conversations with friends where that kind of conversation has been much more vulnerable than it used to be, and less, you're right, focused on my faith isn't strong enough, and why am I sad, or why am I unable to do these normal function type things. In those types of conversations, so when Christians have come to you with those types of perspectives, how do you build up their how do you go about building up their strategy for dealing with, for bettering their mental health parallel to their faith then, instead of just saying, oh, what they used to think, I just need to have more faith. How do you go through saying, well, there are parallel strategies to this outside of a normal church approach?
Okay.
Yeah. What are some of those strategies that you've helped them with?
So one that I've already mentioned is that solution-focused kind of approach to things. So when things are going well, what are those things?
Right.
How do you get that to happen?
Yeah.
And how does your faith fit into what you choose to do and how you choose to behave?
Right.
And based on your faith and what you've thought so far, how is it working?
Yeah.
And is there stuff that you would maybe like to change?
Right.
Another approach is called cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right.
The idea
I know a little bit about that.
Okay.
Very, very basic undergraduate study. Introductory. Yeah.
Yeah. Basic idea being that in the way we process things, we have thoughts, and out of those thoughts come feelings, and out of the feelings we choose behavior. And I always add in, by the way, whether a person's a Christian or not, that another component of that is spirituality.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a religion, an organized church, but we all have in some way a spiritual way of thinking about things.
Right.
How come I'm here? What's my purpose in life?
Right.
That kind of thing. So in the cognitive behavioral approach, it would be looking at how thoughts are happening and the feelings that come out of that way of thinking, and then the behaviors that happen, and also then the spiritual factors that come in. And then looking at ways perhaps different thoughts could be used instead of the ones that are being practiced usually, and what kind of feelings are those?
I know such strategies are probably very conversation specific and client specific and easier to come up with.
Yeah.
But could you give us maybe a window into, so once you've helped someone identify the thoughts that become feelings that become action, probably doing the reverse, they come in saying I've done these things, and we're like, well, how did you feel with those things and such? How do you help them or I guess originate behavior from other thoughts, or I don't quite know how to put it, but how's your strategy to take them from awareness to success in changing their behavior?
Well, the first thing would be to say, so we've talked about the way you think about this and the feelings that happen and the behaviors that you choose out of that. By the way, I always emphasize behaviors are being chosen.
Right.
They're not behaviors that kind of automatically happen out of one's control.
Right. Are the chosen behaviors happening out of unchosen emotions, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I think maybe we feel guilty about the emotions we feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that in your conversations quite often?
And also people concentrate a lot on the emotions that are happening without thinking a lot about the thoughts that were there before the emotions came.
Right.
So once we talk about the presenting pattern, we can talk about, well, is there any other kind of ways of thinking about this that maybe you could use?
Yeah.
What kind of thoughts would you have?
I think that pinpoint the ability to go from like, okay, what thought originated the emotion, I think is possibly where the layperson needs the professional help. I think most lay people, I know they think that's where I would, because trying to identify originating thoughts in the heat of a moment, or even like, a couple hours later, I've put my kids to bed, I yelled at my kids, and okay, well, I felt angry, and to have the internal awareness of what made me angry without professional help, even for somebody who knows a little bit about such things and practices such things, that's quite a difficult thing to do.
And to slow everything down enough to be able to think those steps through. It's hard work, actually.
Which I think it helps to have somebody to talk to. So when somebody wants to approach a therapeutic relationship, like a counseling type relationship, how do you suggest they start? Like they go through the whatever newer they go through Google, and they're look in the phone book, and they're saying, well, I need someone to talk to, but these are names and business names and such. How does someone start going through that? Like how do they start with those conversations? How do they find the right person? What kind of process does that look like?
Talk to a friend who's going to someone for treatment. Is a really good place to start. Recommendations, word of mouth. Aside from that, when you're looking through Google or not the phone book so much anymore, except on Google, then making sure the qualifications of the person you're looking for match what your need is. So generally in the treatment field, it'll be a master's degree of some kind.
I think that's required in Alberta to practice certain things, isn't it?
It's not totally required for a master's degree. There are many really good people actually with a bachelor's degree when that's one of the highest levels in that profession. A master's degree isn't a requirement in every profession to be registered. Then it's a phone call, cold phone call, I guess, to that particular therapist. And based on the conversation you have, deciding there, almost on gut feeling, didn't make me too scared to try. And then at the first interview, it's really important that there's a really good fit between you and the person who's providing the treatment service.
So the person, when you're going into you've accepted the fact that I need some professional help here, and this will be good for me. That first interview should be an interview type of conversation, and with the attitude that if I don't see this counselor, I haven't failed at trying to find. It's not me. It's not me that's the problem.
If I choose to not see this person anymore. That's right. That's not a failure. If there's if there's not a good fit between you and that particular treatment person, then it's better to try to find someone different. If you find yourself going to like 2 or 3 or 4 different therapists and none of them are a good fit, it might be good for you to look inside yourself and say, what's making me nervous here? And try to move through that.
Which I think that'd be a difficult point, but again, the more you are aware of the need, I think the more you would make the effort to do so. I know that would be my own specific case as well. I wanted to key in on that interview thing because I think that's maybe where our professions overlap a little bit, although yours is considerably more important and more intimate than mine. I do public accounting, and so it's the same kind of first conversation. It's like this has to fit. This is this type of relationship. Your expectations have to match with my desires for what I want to do in practice, kind of thing. And so I although yours is like nobody talks to their accountant about their deepest mental health problems until they're owed a lot on their taxes, and then it comes out. But I wanted to key in on that quite a bit. I think it's important to have our viewers kind of feel comfortable with this process, which is kind of why I wanted to draw it out. Because as we approach mental health and mental illness, and such. And as we become aware of certain things, maybe that would be the barrier, like to not wait until you're desperate.
Yeah.
To talk to somebody,
Right.
to go, okay, if the barrier is nervousness, if the barrier is uncertainty, then this conversation can kind of remove portions of that, hopefully, and do that, especially for people of faith, I think, because on one hand, half of us are used to vulnerable conversations, and the other half we've grown up in an environment where that's exactly what you don't do. And we haven't moved past the perfection on Sunday morning type relationship, where we haven't moved to the Wednesday night deep conversation in a living room level of our faith yet.
Yeah.
And so those of us who've moved past that Sunday morning, we do see the need for conversations in a professional light. But maybe those who haven't moved past that Sunday morning and like, I have to be perfect to be a person of faith, giving them that level of comfort, going, oh no, I can do this and not feel like a failure. I can do this, and this is handled well, and I can do this. And the treatment person sitting across from me knows what they're doing, and they're not there they're not there as another person that I think is there to tell me how bad I am, kind of thing. And like to remove that fear there, I think, is an important part of people's awareness.
Yeah, and in the language you've used just now,
Yeah.
I would change the word interview,
Yeah.
which sometimes can be intimidating,
Right.
to conversation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a shared conversation about what's going back and forth. And I feel the client is interviewing the therapist too.
Right.
Or having a conversation.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I guess maybe backing up a little bit, kind of maybe now that maybe our viewers have seen a little bit of how your the conversations you have, how they work. Maybe we can back up and say, kind of reiterate that you've been at this for quite a while. How has what you've done, just kind of, I guess, reiterating some of the common things that we've talked about throughout this series. How has your career changed, or has it changed any how you see how God might see you, and how you see, like, has it changed how you see other people in relation to Him, that kind of thing, and how you read Scripture at all? Has it informed that at all, or has that knowledge informed how you do your practice? Because something we've tried to do in this series is help people think through tough questions based on what they hear from people who have expertise from a variety of viewpoints.
Right.
And so we've had a number of people on with different levels for that. And so I was just curious to think, like, how your specific area of expertise and your experience, which has been quite a long time of experience, has that changed how you've answered some of those tough questions that have come out of reading Scripture, or out of relating to people in light of who God is?
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess over time, like I said, I've probably become more, I see more gray area than black and white, for one thing.
Yeah.
So reading Scripture and reading a particular verse.
Yeah.
When I was in Bible school, and at a lot younger time in my life.
Everything's academic in Bible school.
Yeah. And also I could then have been more black and white than I am now.
Yeah.
Also in developing the understanding that pretty much every person is living their life in a different way. You can't put people in kind of boxes,
Right.
and all these people get treated this way.
Right.
Finding that out over time.
Right.
And again, applying Scripture and Christian thinking to how people are finding their life going.
Yeah.
Again, hopefully helping them to not be so self-critical
Right.
that they're finding their mental health is stressed.
Right.
By the way, that's one of my favorite themes. So how are you taking care of yourself?
Right.
And what are you giving yourself credit for?
Right.
Because we have learned in some ways, in at least some of the Christian growing up that I did, that you shouldn't be too proud of yourself.
Right.
And you get credit to yourself by giving to others.
Right.
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 So a person who is always giving and never on their own taking in, it goes back to my ideas about what's called ecosystemic systems theory, because that's the base that I use.
Yeah.
And the idea being that as a person, I am an operating system, and I need, when I give energy out, to also get energy back in.
Right.
It's kind of like a battery in your car.
Right.
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 So lots of times we're not good at giving ourselves credit. We're not good at taking care of ourselves.
Right.
In order to also then help other people.
Right. What are the strategies that you've given to some people who are very tired and who are giving type people by nature and may be motivated by that, by either a mixture of personality and faith-based motivations?
Yeah.
And it's a large part of it usually is personality. We each interact with our faith in Jesus by quite a large part out of our personality.
Yeah.
So with those motivations combined, what are some of the strategies that you've given people to come out of that emptiness and when they first start, like when they're right burned out?
So right burned out is a hard time to start. It would be better if you started to look at that a little earlier.
Well, at any point in the continuum, I guess. Yeah.
But let's start with right burned out.
Yeah.
So at that point, things to look at, and this is where the whole idea of managing your mental health, and if you're moving into a mental illness kind of category based on the diagnosis we use.
Can I interrupt your answer just 2 seconds to clarify for our viewers? What is it okay to ask what the line is between like a mental health and a mental illness? Is that something easy to describe, or is that a whole course in university?
It's not too hard to describe, but it is a whole bunch of courses at the same time.
Yeah.
I think the difference would be you're moving into an illness when the mental health issues are starting to affect your functioning and make it hard for you to be able to function well.
Right.
So that then you're moving into what would be more of a mental illness.
Right.
And that kind of illness has to be in place for a certain period of time.
Right.
Right. For a diagnosis to take place.
Right.
For example.
Is it because we all have nervous breakdowns from time to time, and that may or may not be mental illness?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. We all kind of have our times when. And also depression, for example. We all feel depressed sometimes.
Yeah.
When that becomes a clinical depression, depends on how long it's been present and how it's affecting your functioning.
Right.
So if you find, for example, sleep is really poor, appetite is either not there or you're eating way too much all the time, you can't concentrate properly, your ability to think and to feel like you're expressing yourself in a logical way. When those things become where you're not feeling like you're functioning well there, you're moving into more of a mental illness kind of status.
Right.
Now, again, we all have mental health times like that.
Yes.
Right? So it depends on the frequency, the duration, and the intensity of the status indicators.
What you're kind of telling me is that it's very important not to self-diagnose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're concerned about such, to seek professional help with that, because there's criteria for these types of things that we're not aware of. That go beyond the doctor page on our Google search.
Yeah. Other thing to remember too when treating a mental illness is that the people who are able to provide medicine in that area to deal with the biological component of how we're functioning are doctors and psychiatrists. And psychiatrists are the people who have been trained for many years about
Yeah.
how to match the medicine
Right.
with the need.
Right.
And a lot of family doctors also feel comfortable in providing that.
Yeah.
And usually these days, family doctors are the main people doing that kind of work.
Right.
Because the wait list for a psychiatrist is really long.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Due to demand, I hear more and more people going
Yeah,
to these types of things. So to revisit our I guess our strategies, because I cut you off to kind of clarify the mental health,
Right.
mental illness continuum.
Yeah.
To kind of revisit our strategies for someone who's tired of giving, going back to
Right.
our and saying I want to do that more, but I can't.
Yeah.
And how do you start them out?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how's your sleep?
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest factors that affects how we function in our emotional state
Yeah.
is how much good sleep we're getting or not getting.
Right.
So we'd look at the sleep patterns for the person.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of things are, what time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? Do you
Yeah.
wake up in between?
Yeah.
When you do wake up, can you go back to sleep quickly or not?
Yeah.
And what are you doing before you go to sleep?
Yeah.
So, for example, if you find yourself laying down in bed at night and thinking a number of racing thoughts or not being able to settle,
Yeah.
if you've just been watching 2 hours worth of news on television,
Yeah.
that maybe is something you want to change and
Yeah.
read a book instead
Yeah.
and get, for one thing, the light from the TV out of your brain system.
Right.
And then doing something like reading helps with that
Yeah.
and takes you away from all the bad news to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be one of the starts,
Yeah.
checking appetite and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So when you say you're just burnt out and you don't feel like doing it anymore, so how long has that been happening for you? When did you first notice it?
Right.
And that would be the starting kind of questions.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we're almost through time, but I have one focused question to ask you because this wasn't under consideration when we started talking, but this conversation has kind of gone in a fascinating direction to me. So I just want to ask one more focused direction. So when you talk about sleep and appetite and such, half the people watching this are just going to go, well, that's impossible. Because half the people watching this are mothers of small children.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
what do you say to kind of give them a sense of hope for the next umpteen years of their life? What do you say? Is there? I mean, obviously therapy is a good idea. But what do you say to say, okay, on the way to therapy and through therapy, how do I manage this inside of this continuum? I mean, you raise children yourself. Yeah, and I think that would be a very relevant question to most of our audience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there, it's recognizing reality.
Yeah.
So you go to bed at 10, and then at 2 in the morning, your baby wakes up crying, and you have to take care of your
Or
baby.
12, 2, and 4:30.
Yeah, or 12, 2, and 4:30.
Yeah.
So those are realities of how life is for you right now.
Yeah.
How are you feeling like you're managing those?
Yeah.
Is it, and then if the answer is,
And you're not diminishing the impact of that reality.
Right.
You're just helping people live through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would be one of the? I guess you're saying understanding the reality, but then and I cut you off there. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if there's things you can change about that,
Yeah.
ways that you could do it differently that would help you to be less tired
Yeah.
and work with what this reality is for the next year or so anyway.
Yeah.
By the way, you're always going to be a mother.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how old you get.
Yeah.
So welcome to that stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I'd be saying that. I know you're not going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So looking at alternatives that could be built in.
Yeah.
If the person has a partner, how is the partner involved in that 2 o'clock, 4:30, 6 o'clock kind of taking care of the baby?
Yeah.
If you're by yourself, what are resources that you think you might need to bring in that
Yeah.
will help you to get a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that, and I just wanted to bring that up because I know that's not directly to do with what you do for a living, but I'm sure you see quite a few of those
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, very good. I kind of wanted just to bring up the topic
That's
because
a
I
good
don't want
idea,
people to
yeah.
feel like your recommendations are out of reach for them.
Right.
Even in the moments that they are out of reach.
Yeah.
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 Well, thank you very much, Don. Is there anything else that you wanted to say to do with any of the things that we've talked about so far, or maybe something that you had wanted to communicate to our viewers that I haven't brought up? Is there anything else that you would want?
I guess just on a favorite theme of mine.
Yeah.
Which is about parenting.
Yes, please.
And that is parents are the leaders in the family system.
Yeah.
And it's important by example and behavior to demonstrate that kind of leadership. And also through words and demonstration of closeness, and when things discipline is needed, how to do that in a way that still builds the child. So that's an important theme to me as I talk with parents.
Right.
And the biggest part of that is there is a continuum of parenting.
Yeah.
However big, I don't know how big I can show on the
Yeah,
TV
yeah,
screen.
yeah.
But on the very far end, in a very, very narrow piece of it,
Yeah.
is bad parenting.
Yeah.
And on the other end, very, very narrow little piece,
Yeah.
maybe some people are perfect parents.
Yeah.
Most of us are in between,
Yeah.
and it's called good enough parenting.
Yeah.
That big continuum has lots of room in it, and it's all good enough parenting.
Yeah.
It's not perfect,
Yeah.
but it's not bad either.
I think that's quite a credible statement coming from someone such as yourself, who've talked parents through their struggles, but also probably children of parents who struggled. So that seems to be quite an encouraging note, if that's the way it was intended. To again, from coming from someone yourself who's had many of these conversations by people who've been impacted by that kind of life. Yeah, no, thank you very much for saying that.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. I want to ask 1,000 more questions and carry us through like the next 3 hours. But what I'm going to say is that I hope our viewers have been as fascinated with this conversation as I have, and that they've learned a little bit from Don, but mostly that they've learned that these types of conversations are valuable to your mental health, and conversations with maybe you need to seek a professional, and maybe this conversation was the moment that you found that awareness and that comfort level to go and seek to do that. Yeah, what a great few things that you've told us today. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you found some value in this conversation, and I hope that you will seek further answers to your questions that I know you have, because they're stirring in my head as well. Thank you for watching, and in 2 weeks we're going to do another one of these. Today was kind of the first of a series we're going to call Myths, and that being that we're addressing some myths that may have come up around Christianity or inside of Christianity. And the first one is the state of our mental health and how we may not need professional help. Although, as we've discussed, that's less of a stigmatism than it has been in years past. The next topic we're going to do is probably going to be of more of a historical bent, and we may have a few more conversations around the mental health struggles as well before we get to that point. But either way, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.